When I woke up in that hospital room, my body barely hanging on, the first thing I asked was, "Did my parents come?" The nurse didn't answer me with words. She just looked away, pity clouding her eyes. I was in a coma for 3 days. 3 days teetering between life and death after a car crash that shattered my ribs, fractured my spine, and nearly stopped my heart. 3 days where no one from my so-called family showed up. Not my father, not my mother, and certainly not my golden boy brother, Mason. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video? The nurse later told me it was my neighbor. Yes, my 74-year-old neighbor who found me unconscious in my car, slumped over the steering wheel in the freezing cold. She called 911. She waited until the ambulance came. She even visited me. But my parents? The people who raised me? They never even called the hospital. And this wasn't the first time they abandoned me. I should have seen it coming. They always made it clear I was the extra, the unwanted one. I was the daughter who ruined their retirement plan, who cost too much with her asthma meds, who should have married rich like her brother. Every major milestone in my life, graduation, my first apartment, launching my small art business, they barely acknowledged. Meanwhile, Mason got applause for breathing. He crashed 2 cars and they bought him another. He dropped out of college and they framed his decision to explore his passion like he was some misunderstood genius. But this, letting me die? I didn't have insurance. My art didn't cover hospital bills. The medical staff gently asked if there was anyone who could help with the finances. I gave them my father's number. When the hospital called him, he apparently said, "If she's alive, she can figure it out." She always wanted to be independent. They left me for dead. Literally. What they didn't know was that while I was stuck in that sterile white room fighting to breathe, something inside me snapped. Or maybe it woke up. That day, I decided, if I survived, I would never, never let them get a single drop from me again. By the time I was discharged, I was thousands of dollars in debt, bruised in places I didn't know I could be, and walking with a cane. I moved back into the tiny studio I'd been renting. Thank God I'd prepaid for 6 months and started planning. But the universe is funny. Just when I thought I'd have to claw my way out of this pit alone, I got a call from an attorney. Apparently, my great-aunt, one I'd only met twice, had passed away and named me in her will. Her voice had always been kind when we met, her eyes full of something my parents never gave me: respect. She'd been following my art, apparently, quietly supporting my online work. When she died, she left everything to me: her estate, her land, her investments, all of it. And that's when the real story began. When I stepped into the attorney's office that following Monday, I still had a limp from the crash and bruises on my arms, but I held my chin high. I was handed a folder, thick, legal, overwhelming, and inside it were the details of a fortune I never knew existed. My great-aunt Evelyn had been wealthy, quietly, brilliantly. She'd never flaunted her money because she didn't trust people like my parents. Her estate included a vineyard in Northern California, 3 rental properties in Oregon, and over $3 million in diversified investments, and she left every last bit of it to me, with one line in her handwritten letter that brought tears to my eyes: "To the only one in this family who knows what pain feels like, and never turned cold. Use this to heal and build your own legacy. Leave the rest behind." I didn't tell anyone at first. I didn't need to. I paid off my hospital debt anonymously. I sold the lease on my old studio apartment. I took a trip to the vineyard, my vineyard now, and walked among the rows of grapes like I was finally breathing for the first time. Then came the message from Mason. "Hey, heard you're alive. Mom said you've been ignoring them. Don't be dramatic." No, how are you? No, glad you made it. Just entitlement, arrogance, and that same family poison I'd spent my whole life drinking. But I didn't answer. Not yet. The next week, I saw my parents again, not because I called them, but because they showed up. I'd quietly listed my aunt's beachfront condo for sale, and apparently, they recognized the address. I opened the door in silence. My dad's eyes went wide the moment he saw the marble floors. My mother blinked at the luxury furniture. "Whose place is this?" she asked. "Mine," I wanted to say. But I smiled and said, "Can I help you?" They played nice at first. Too nice. "Oh, honey, we were so worried. We've been meaning to check on you. You look amazing. So healthy. That dress looks expensive. Is it designer?" I offered them tea. I served it in china with gold-rimmed cups, the ones I had shipped in from France. Then the act slipped. Dad leaned in and said, "We were talking with Mason. He said you might have come into some money. Your Aunt Evelyn died, didn't she?" Sad. Such a sweet woman. Mom added, "She always liked you. Anyway, you know your father and I were her closest relatives after you. We assumed she'd split everything. Maybe you can just transfer our share." I sat back, stunned. No apology. No remorse for abandoning me in the hospital. No recognition that they were the reason I was nearly buried in medical debt. Just hands outstretched. I looked them dead in the eyes and said, "You didn't show up when I was dying. You didn't even ask if I lived, but you want to share my inheritance?" Silence. Then my father exploded. "Don't be selfish. We raised you. You owe us." That was the final crack. I stood up, walked over to the fireplace, and pulled out the original letter Aunt Evelyn had written. I handed it to my mother. "She left everything to me. No splits, no debates, no crumbs. And just so you know, I sold her stocks last week and bought out a business." My mom frowned. "What business?" "The one you always mocked me for wanting to start, my art collective. I bought a downtown building. And guess what?" I leaned in and whispered, "I fired your friend Karen as gallery manager. She never liked me either." But I wasn't finished. They left furious, but not before my dad spat, "You're going to regret cutting us off. When Mason gets the house and everything, don't come crawling." I smiled. "You'll be the ones crawling." "Because the house?" Already in my name. They just didn't know it yet. The days turned into weeks, and for the first time in my life, I felt peace. Not just silence. Real, earned peace. I had rebuilt myself brick by emotional brick, far away from the guilt and manipulation that once choked me. But peace has a funny way of being interrupted, especially when your past refuses to stay buried. It started with a voicemail from Mason. "Hey, they're selling the family house. Mom and Dad are freaking out. Something about overdue taxes? Anyway, not my circus. I'm moving in with Claire. Thought you should know." I already knew, because I'd done it. When Aunt Evelyn left me everything, I didn't just inherit wealth. I inherited power. Quiet power. Legal power. Hidden in one of the trusts was ownership of a private mortgage company. And guess who'd borrowed against the house 5 years ago and never paid it off? My parents. They thought the loan had vanished with some faceless bank. They never knew I'd bought the debt, with a single signature. So no, they weren't being evicted by some cold institution. They were being evicted by the daughter they abandoned in a hospital bed. I waited until the day the movers arrived. My father stood on the front lawn, red-faced, shouting at the truck driver. My mother sat on the porch steps, sobbing into a tissue like it was a performance she hoped someone would film. And then I pulled up. Not in my old beat-up sedan. That had been sold months ago. I drove my sleek charcoal gray electric SUV right onto their street and stepped out in a tailored navy suit. My hair tied back, my chin high. My mother's mouth dropped. "You?" My dad stomped forward. "What the hell are you doing here? Come to gloat?" I held up a single white envelope. "This is your notice. The deed now belongs to a charitable trust, in my name. The house will be converted into a shelter for runaway girls. Girls like the one you left behind." They both froze. My dad's fists clenched. "You can't do this. This is our home." "No," I said calmly. "It was. Now it's theirs." I pointed to a group of young women standing near the sidewalk, guided by a social worker I'd partnered with. Some had visible bruises. One was holding a baby. All of them had eyes that looked too old for their age. My mother choked. "You're doing this out of spite." I stepped closer. "I'm doing this out of survival. You raised me in a house where love had conditions, where being successful meant being silent. You left me when I needed you most, and now you're getting what you gave." They looked at the girls again and then back at me. That's when the panic set in. Not anger, not pride. Desperation. "Please," my mom whispered. "We have nowhere to go." I leaned in, not with cruelty, but with clarity. "You told me I was worthless without a job. Dead weight, a leech. So I got a job. I built a business. I inherited an empire. I rose. You don't get to climb with me now." They left that day with nothing but the bags they'd once thrown onto the sidewalk. The same sidewalk I'd once cried on after being kicked out. Poetic, isn't it? Weeks later, I held the grand opening for the new shelter. It wasn't just a house. It was a message carved into brick. You don't need to be accepted to be worthy. Reporters came. Donors wrote checks. I stood beside girls who reminded me of myself. And for the first time, my story wasn't about pain. It was about purpose. The final twist? A letter arrived the night before the opening. It was from a woman I'd never met, a retired nurse from the hospital I'd been admitted to. She'd recognized my name in the paper. Inside the envelope was a note and an old photo. Me, unconscious, with her sitting beside my bed. "They left after 5 minutes, but I stayed your whole first night. I just wanted you to know. You were never truly alone." I wept. Not for the pain, but for the healing. Because my story didn't end with abandonment. It ended with rebirth. And they were just the prologue. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you